Sweet Home Alabama, Lord, I'm coming home to you. Also, it's Armageddon 2000 from December 10th at the Birmingham Jefferson Civic Center in Birmingham, Alabama. It's the only pay-per-view to take place in the state of Alabama. A fucking ton of people have nominated this show on Patreon, so here they all are. The Bad Arse Mofo, Steven Slater 007, Glenn Thompson, Shrek Boy, Nick Brown, Elliot Slater, Chris Talamentes, Natalie Warner, Kyle Redding, Sam Adelaide, Ron Gleason, and Jonathan Keane over on patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret. 14,920 folks in attendance, 465,000 pay-per-view buys. Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler on commentary here. It is a time of big internal change in the World Wrestling Federation. Now, as I've said before on this channel, the year 2000 was arguably the greatest year the Attitude Era saw in terms of storytelling and overall popularity, but by December, the former head writer Chris Kresge was out of the company and Stephanie McMahon was the new head of creative. All of the top stars in the upper mid-card scene at this time are all lumped together into one match, the main event, and that is partially, I think, why this show is so fondly remembered, is specifically the main event, the six-man Hell in a Cell match. So, for the first time in 20 years, I'm going to watch this show and try and find out if this high demand and high love and nostalgia for this show comes from a place of good or a place of evil. As the show begins, Patterson and Briscoe welcome Mr. McMahon to the arena. McMahon walks with a cane after suffering 3 consecutive babyface finishers last Monday. Then on SmackDown that same week, Vince famously growl screamed at his wife Linda, "I want a divorce." Vince is also dead set on canceling tonight's Hell in a Cell match because he sees all the wrestlers involved as an investment for him. So if one or potentially all these guys get seriously hurt in this brutal match Hell in a Cell, he would be hurting financially. Opening contest is an intergender 6-person elimination tag match as the Hardy Boyz and Lita take on the Radicalz. And of course, the angle around which this entire match revolves is the feud between Dean Malenko, the light heavyweight champion and self-professed ladies man, and Lita, who is the object of his affection. For several weeks, Dean's been making passes at Lita. She wants none of this. Eventually, Dean even puts his title on the line against her in a match where if he wins, he gets to go on a date with Lita, and he wins. They go on the date on SmackDown, and Dean's acting here is all at once creepy and cringe and just skeezy, but also hilarious. Like, you have to admire the unwavering confidence that Dean's character has here despite having no game and no charisma. He's very persistent. And at the same time, when he thinks he's going to get what he wants, he doesn't know what to do with that, because at the restaurant, Lita says that she wants him, and he goes, "Really? I mean, really?" And then at the hotel, there's this whole setup where Lita's in her lingerie hitting on Dean. The lights go out and they come back up. "Champagne, Dean?" The Hardy Boyz break stuff over Malenko and beat him up. But the best part about this scene is something I didn't even realize until hearing it again 20 years later, is that Dean's selling here is amazing, because you can actually hear him go, "Oh, that hurt." So here we go with the match. The Hardys are on top early on, a big wheelbarrow slam to Eddie Guerrero, Jeff diving onto Eddie and Dean on the outside. There's a massive Eddie sucks chant for doing almost nothing. Looks like there's a bit of a botch here where Jeff was expecting to be cut off on the apron by Saturn, but Saturn misses his cue. Lita with a twist of fate to Eddie, a swanton by Jeff, and Eddie's out. Saturn catches the poetry in motion attempt and hits the Death Valley driver onto Jeff, and now Jeff's eliminated. Matt with a twist of fate on Saturn, and now Saturn's gone. Terry, the Hardys' former manager, and now Saturn's main squeeze, gets in Matt's face, but Lita takes her down. Dean with the shove and a roll up to Matt. Now it's down to Malenko and Lita, and I popped big at Saturn carrying Terry off on his shoulder through the shot. Lita with a huge run on Dean here, but Malenko hits a big superplex. Should be enough, but Dean's not done yet. Just pulverizes her for another minute or so, picks her up from a pinfall again, then locks in this really snug Texas cloverleaf, and Lita taps out. Dean holding on to the submission for a couple of seconds afterward. Michael Cole tries to interview Lita after the match, which seems kind of an inappropriate timing, but Lita says that she knows she can beat him. I gave it 3 stars out of 5 to open things up. The match felt kind of brief, but there was a lot of action packed in there to try and get, 6 people in there to all get their stuff in. Some of it a little janky at times, but I think they covered for it pretty well. And I also appreciate, as kind of hard to watch the story is of Dean just constantly pursuing Lita, I think this match really played in and helped build that storyline fairly well. Lillian Garcia interviews the WWF champion Kurt Angle about the Hell in a Cell match, calling it the make or break moment of his career. Kurt goes into a long monologue here, here, says he's beaten Bulgarians and Czechs and Turks to win his gold medals. He's not sweating an eyebrow or a nose or a badass or a fat ass or a redneck. He admits that nothing he has done in his life has prepared him for the cell match, and he shouldn't have to perform in front of, no offense Alabama, according to him, a bunch of redneck hicks. Says he'll win tonight, then go drink a glass of 99% fat-free milk and hop on the next flight out. Quite a speech by Angle here. We get a flashback to No Way Out 2000's Hell in a Cell match, the first of many clips that shows the Cell's brutality. On we go now to the European title match as William Regal defends against Hardcore Holly. 1 week prior at the Rebellion pay-per-view in the UK, Crash Holly with quite possibly the upset of the year in my opinion, as he beat William Regal in Regal's home country to win the European Championship, but Willie Regs won it back the following Monday on Raw. He put a hurting on Crash and Molly Holly afterward, which prompted this thirst for revenge by cousin Hardcore Holly. Regal on the mic and in his most charming way telling the people of Alabama that they're dirty, they smell, and they enjoy having sex with farm animals. Before the home state boy Hardcore Holly emerges to a huge pop.
From Mobile, Alabama!
They brawl to start things off, they fight on the outside, and Holly is thrown into the ring post. Back in the ring, Bob goes for a flying nothing, but Regal puts up the boot. A superplex by Regal doesn't get quite the reaction as the one we saw in the last match. Nice bow and arrow by William too. Goes for a double underhook, but Holly powers out. Holly with a comeback, hitting the best dropkick in the business, even the Alabama Jam. Goes for a Hurricane Rana, but Regal powerbombs him. Holly decks Regal with his bionic, surgically repaired forearm, looks to have the match won. When Raven runs in and plants Holly with the Raven effect, which is a terrible name for the DDT, Regal covers and retains. This one gets 2.5 stars out of 5 for me. I felt the match was kind of in the middle of the road, even though I popped for Bob Holly's big top rope leg drop. Don't see him bust that out very often. And I think that the vocal partisan crowd, which by the way, were really on fire for most of the show tonight, I think helped move this match along, but ultimately the outside interference at the end was kind of disappointing. Like, the connection between Raven and Hardcore Holly at this point in programming is so barely tangible. I felt it kind of came out of nowhere, and sadly, it's not the last time we'll see this kind of finish in a match tonight. Backstage, Kevin Kelly with Rikishi. Is he concerned that the alliance between he, Kurt Angle, and Triple H has fallen apart? Rikishi says he's put his whole life into becoming champion, and that anyone who crosses him will know what he's willing to sacrifice. Really uses the word sacrifice a lot in this promo. Foreshadowing, perhaps? More intergender action up next as Chyna takes on Val Venis of Right to Censor. Chyna's now caught in the crosshairs of RTC for recently being in Playboy, and she was laid out over the announce table 1 week ago by Val Venis. They acted as though this attack was the most devastating thing that ever happened to her, but I'm pretty sure she's taken bigger bumps than the one she had here. Chyna attacks Val and chases Ivory off on the outside before the match begins. Val counters an Irish whip with some knees and the Russian leg sweep. Love that combo, by the way. Lawler calls Ivory a butterface as the match goes on. Thanks for the insight, King. Chyna avoids the big elbow drop and begins to make her comeback with many forearms and a clothesline. Val goes for the money shot, but Chyna moves. Ivory trips Chyna, and now she's on the run around the ring. Val, capitalizing on the distraction, hits the fisherman suplex with a bridge to win. It's a pretty basic, brief match to help get more heat between Chyna and Ivory, which is going to build toward WrestleMania 17, which I've talked about in the past. Chyna is not the best worker here, and she can only have really good matches with the right people, and Val Venis is not the right people. After the match, Chyna grabs Ivory, but Val comes back and splats her with a powerbomb, and as we soon find out the next night on Raw, the violence and drama between these folks will soon escalate. Backstage, Stephanie McMahon wants to have a chat with her father Vince, but she's not concerned about the pending divorce between her parents. She's afraid for Triple H in tonight's cell match, and Vince says he's going to put a stop to this. We go to a segment where earlier in the day, Kevin Kelly's in the ring inside the cell with the Undertaker. Taker says the cell's brought out a side of him that even he's scared of, talks about what he did to Shawn Michaels in the cell, what he did to Mick Foley, with some accompanying footage and dramatic music, but let's just ignore that whole thing he did with the Boss Man a year and a half ago. He says he likes that side of himself, and he wonders who he'll make famous tonight. Nice little promo segment. Then Mr. McMahon makes his way to the ring and says he meant every word of what he said last week about how much he's given himself for the good of the company. He meant what he said when he wanted a divorce. He meant what he said when he has concern for the men inside the cell match later tonight, and says, speaking as a humanitarian, he wants the fans to join him in telling Commissioner Foley to cancel the cell match. He wants the fans to think about what might happen in the match tonight, about the violence that will occur and the careers that may end. He closes out by saying, when you see your favorite superstar mired in the afterbirth of this match, not only will their blood be on Mick Foley's conscience, but on your conscience as well. Great promo by Vince here. Where else are you going to find a phrase, Mired in the afterbirth. What a collection of words there, a little row. In a last man standing match, Kane takes on Chris Jericho. These two have been warring for months. Kane still wants to deform Chris Jericho, still hates beautiful people, still mad over getting coffee spilled on him. Jericho, meanwhile, has finally unleashed his vicious side. These two have been beating the bejesus out of each other for weeks with weapons, and Jericho's been thrown through a window. Just wild stuff, and here's the blow-off. The match begins with them fighting on the ramp, then they go to the back right away. They disturb a couple of workers who are just having their lunch break on the bed of their sawdust truck that's there for some reason. There's some foreshadowing there. Fighting back into the arena and toward the ring, Jericho lays it in on the big red machine with a flying elbow. Kane catches Jericho in midair and drives his back into the ring post. Beats Jericho down, stretching him out for a while before the referee starts the count, but Chris, showing life, goes for a kick, but Kane kinda catches him and slams him down. Jericho fights back and goes for a lion salt, but eats some knees. Kane's back on top. Jericho remains defiant and takes a choke slam for his courage, though. Kane thinks that's it. He finally gets up at 9, and Kane is livid, whomps him with a chair, goes for a tombstone, but Jericho fights it off. Low blow and a DDT, a chair to the head, even a lion salt with chair assist. Both men are down. Kane sits up dramatically at 9 and takes down Jericho, then throws him out of the ring. They fight their way back up to the stage. Kane wants to put Jericho away with a choke slam, but Jericho fights out, and we get a big ol' edit. Somehow Jericho ends up in a different place than he started as he slams Kane through the table. What botch did they cover up here on the network? Jericho shoves the entire wall of barrels of the set onto Kane. Kane is, quote, flattened by the barrels that clearly don't touch him and can't answer the 10 count. Jericho wins. You know what? This match gets a lot of crap from people online. I don't think it deserves all the hate that it gets. I think it deserves a little bit of hate. It's not the best match in their series. Jericho in 2000 had better matches with people on pay-per-view, including with Kane himself, than what we had here. And also, I think this angle went on way too long, and the blow-off was a long time coming here. And the finish was a little bit illusion breaking. You know, the barrels don't even touch Kane, but oh, he's buried by them and he can't get up. But I think Jericho did look strong overall in this match, and though the feud did go a bit long, it did help further legitimize him. The coach interviews Commissioner Foley, and he asks, does he have second thoughts about making the cell match? Foley asserts that he made the right call making this match because the fans demanded it, but he'll be glad when the stress surrounding this is all over. Meanwhile, in WWF New York and Times Square, it's special guest Shawn Michaels. Talks about being the guinea pig in the first Hell in a Cell and how much more dangerous it's gotten, how it's anyone's ball game tonight. In a four-way for the tag titles, the Good Father and Bull Buchanan of Right to Censor defend against Edge and Christian, the Dudley Boyz, and Road Dogg and K-Kwik. How about that young R-Truth teaming up with Road Dogg, who's a few weeks away from being suspended and ultimately fired? If you couldn't guess from the quality of their pre-match rap you saw most weeks, yeah, you can tell Road Dogg's not in the best shape.
Oh, you didn't know? You better call somebody.
Going to business for himself. What's he mean by that, JR? You know, they've been all week down in Florida helping with that hand recount.
You better
We're going to get rowdy right now, Kane. Here we go. Their 1-year anniversary here tonight on SmackDown.
K-Kwik, get rowdy.
My favorite part about the build here is something I still very vividly remember watching as a teen when the Dudley Boyz try to convince RTC they're joining the group by dressing up as them and helping them out one week on Raw. And then on SmackDown, they're about to be inducted, and Bubba with the classic line,
If putting people through tables is wrong, then I don't want to be right.
Wait a minute.
K-Kwik is worked over by Edge and Christian, then by RTC, all working over Quick's arm. Finally, Bubba Ray gets tagged in with a damn big hot tag. Backdrops and clotheslines aplenty. K-Kwik with a dive to the outside, but RTC catch him and he gets dropped. Road Dogg with one of the most athletic moves you'll ever see him do, followed by a Stevie kick. We get the was up, Devon get the table, a doomsday device to Edge, but Christian makes the save. 3Ds to Bull, and the Good Father, another was up. Stevie out of nowhere with this running DDT to Devon on the floor. That allows Edge and Christian to capitalize and beat Bubba to win the tag titles for a 4th time. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. I think in terms of execution, this is one of the better matches of the evening. I liked everyone's work in this match. Everyone got a chance to shine. Also thought it was a clever way to transition the belts from one heel team to another one without having one heel team beat the other. And of course, seeing Edge and Christian back on top always makes me smile. They are my favorite tag team during this era. So yeah, seeing them with the belts again is great. Backstage, Stephanie shares her concerns to her husband Triple H. He says the championship is the most important thing in the world to him, saying this to his kayfabe wife, and he'll do whatever he has to do in order to become champion again, even if it kills him. Just shouts right in her face. On the Thanksgiving episode of SmackDown, the one Billy Gunn beat Eddie Guerrero in a really good match to become the Intercontinental Champion. Meanwhile, Chris Benoit has been raising hell in the Federation, claiming to be the best damn technical wrestler in the history of the company, and so now we have this match here for the championship as Benoit challenging Gunn. Jim Ross on commentary saying, "I've never seen a champion wrestle with 2 earrings. Okay. Fighting on the outside, Gunn goes for a running attack, but Benoit throws him into the steel steps. JR says Benoit has an XFL linebacker mentality. Ugh. Benoit working Gunn's leg, even gets Billy to go, "Oh, Jesus." Oh, Jesus! Benoit with the German suplexes, the diving headbutt, but Gunn gets out of the way just in time. The one begins to come back, but the leg becomes a hindrance, hits the Famouser, but takes too much time to pin. Benoit kicks out. Gunn going for the sleeper slam, but Benoit slips out of it and fights mightily to get him in the crossface. Gunn gets his foot on the ropes, Benoit holding on a little bit longer. Billy tries to go for a slam, but he drops him. They're definitely calling an audible in the ring at this point. Gunn with a last-ditch attempt at a roll-up, but Benoit kicks out. Back in the crossface, and Gunn taps. Benoit has won the Intercontinental Championship for the 3rd time. I give it 2.5 stars out of 5. Feel like a pretty standard match, and you know that these two have both had better matches in the past. I mean, the one that Gunn had against Guerrero to win the belt, I think, was far better than this. You know, Gunn for the babyface champion didn't get to do a whole lot here, which is kind of surprising, but Benoit looks intense as hell in this match. We see a clip of Jim Ross talking to Steve Austin earlier. How's he going to prepare for this Cell match? Austin says he's not slept, he's been drinking coffee all day. He reiterates that classic mantra of his, don't trust anybody. On we go to the women's title match as Ivory of RTC defends against Molly Holly and Trish Stratus. Good on Ivory for being able to simultaneously juggle 2 storylines at once, the one with Chyna and then also the one here with Trish and Molly, even though that in that particular storyline in programming, she seems to be kind of the 3rd wheel here. Ivory and Trish work together for a bit, but Ivory soon betrays her. They argue and Molly with a big dive onto both of them. Molly hits the powerbomb on Trish. Ivory sneaks in, dumps Molly out, and pins Trish and wins to retain. I give it a 0.5 star out of 5. It's a redonkulously short match, which is too bad because on paper this could be a good one. I think Molly and Ivory with their combined in-ring credentials could carry something good out of Trish Stratus, who by this point still a relative newcomer to in-ring stuff, but at least, you know, the main eventers got to get their time, right? After the match, TNA-PA, that's TNA stealing APA's gimmick, they show up and harass Molly when Crash shows up and stands up for her. Then out come the returning APA with Bradshaw wearing the infamous always pounding ass t-shirt. They're back after being taken out weeks earlier by TNA, and they clean house. Backstage, The Rock cuts a fiery promo here saying he'll do whatever it takes to win the title. He'll sweat and he'll bleed and he'll walk into hell and walk out with the championship. Great stuff. In your main event, it's the infamous Armageddon 6-man Hell in a Cell match for the WWF Championship as Kurt Angle defends against Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H, Rikishi, and The Undertaker. In the last month or so, Steve Austin tried to kill Triple H's Survivor Series, though he came back like 2 weeks later. Rikishi and The Rock have been fighting each other. The champion Kurt Angle used twin magic to beat The Undertaker at Survivor Series, and it's been stirring the pot with about everyone else in the Federation. So a little more than a week before the pay-per-view, Commissioner Foley announced this Hell in a Cell match for the title, the first ever and only 6-man cell match in history. The heels say that Foley resents the fact that he was retired earlier in the year in the cell, so now he wants everyone else to suffer. The announcement also led to the on-air return of Mr. McMahon, who, as I mentioned earlier, is trying to protect his investment. Foley has also declared that if anyone is seriously injured in this match, he would resign as commissioner. Also, one of the best parts of the build here is this all-time great promo on Raw by The Rock. You've probably seen this one, where he takes the piss out of all 5 of his competitors doing impressions of them, does an impression of Triple H and Rikishi and The Undertaker and Stone Cold and stuff. It's brilliant. It's so damn funny, and it's, like I said, one of the best parts of the build here. Speaking of build, they did a great job, not just in the week before the pay-per-view, but also in this show itself, of really building up how devastating and destructive the Hell in a Cell match is. But at this point, they had like a half dozen Hell in a Cell matches under their belts, a couple of them ending in no contest, so they barely count in the pantheon of it. But the ones we've seen on pay-per-view have always been really devastating and destructive. constructive. And if anything, this show, Armageddon 2000, is a love letter to the Hell in a Cell match concept because of how much time they spend building up the destructive nature of the cell. The match begins in a giant brawl, Taker with Angle, Austin with Triple H, Rock with Rikishi. A great exchange on commentary here where they take the piss out of Lloyd's of London, which was an insurance agency that many wrestlers over the years had taken policies out with and occasionally abused.
You think somebody would insure a Hell in a Cell match? Not even Lloyd's of London would touch that. I don't know, sometimes they're pretty stupid.
Each pair gets some time in the ring and they occasionally swap opponents, Triple H suplexing Austin on the floor. Lots more brawling outside the ring. Okay, guys, we get it. Triple H is bleeding after his face is ground into the cell wall. Lots more face grinding, walking all the way around the ring with it. It felt like a house show spot because it was so silly. Triple H pedigrees Rikishi, but The Rock breaks up the pinfall. A few more broken covers after finishers. H is bouncing off the cell like a ping pong ball. He works more with the cell than just about anyone else in this match. Out comes Mr. McMahon and the Stooges on the back of a truck bed conveniently full of sawdust, the same one we saw in the Last Man Standing match. Vince telling the workers to rip the cell down. They pull off the door. Then out comes Commissioner Foley. He and Vince argue. Foley decks Patterson and Briscoe and has McMahon removed by security, but the truck remains. We can go back to paying attention to the wrestlers now. Austin brawling with Triple H, throwing the crane camera at him. Triple H throws Austin through the window of the truck. Rock goes for a him bottom on the roof of the car, but Triple H with the low blow hits a pedigree. More brawling between everyone. Austin slingshots Triple H into the hood of a car. The height he gets. Lawler wants Earl Hebner to do something about this, but JR says an army of Hebners couldn't stop these men. By the way, Army of Hebners is a great name for a band. The crowd finally wakes up when Austin and Triple H begin to climb the outside of the cage. The two brawl atop of the cell. Hunter leaning precariously close to the edge, but he fights back. Up come Angle and Undertaker, stunner on top of the cage, just like in the video games. Angle is now bleeding as Triple H and Austin climb their way down the top of the cell. Now we see Rikishi climb up as the Undertaker and timekeeper Mark Yeaton have a hard time coordinating a chair handoff from the floor. Rikishi beats Angle and Taker with the chair. Angle escapes and Taker fights back on the big quiche. Then the big quote-unquote choke slam off the side of the cell and into the truck bed. It's a good thing that's been there for the last 10 minutes to break his fall. Even if it looks a little more contrived and staged than the fall McFoley took in '98, still very impressive to see the big man take a big fall like that. Rock and Austin fight it out in the ring. Triple H joins them. Rock with the him bottom on Angle, but Austin breaks it up. Stunner on the Rock, the Rocky flop, Triple H with the neck breaker on Austin, and while that happens, Angle placing a hand atop the Rock and gets a 3 count to win and retain by some miracle. The man with all the odds stacked against him wins in the end. A weary Angle holds up the belt in celebration, but then eats a stunner from Austin because that's how the show's gotta end, I guess. I give this one 3 stars out of 5, and if I'm being honest, like half to 1 star of that goes to Rikishi alone for the bump he took, because everything else in this match is pretty flat for Hell in a Cell. I mean, like, for the life-altering event they booked this thing and built it up to be in the week or so leading up to this, it didn't really pan out that way for most of the time in this match. I mean, there's a reason probably they've never done a 6-man Hell in a Cell before, because this was kind of a cluster. For a lot of it was just outside brawling, kind of one-dimensional, and then some spots on the set on the outside that could have been done without the Hell in a Cell. I did enjoy the story of Vince throughout the night trying to cancel this show to the point where he and the Stooges come up on the truck and everything. It helps set up Rikishi's bump. But besides that, it's like, this is one of the weaker Hell in a Cell matches in history. As for the aftermath of Hell in a Cell, Rikishi suffered a kayfabe ruptured spleen in the match, while Triple H suffered a kayfabe herniated disc. These two would come back to TV within weeks, though. Vince putting pressure on McFoley to resign, while at the same time regaining full power in the company after his wife Linda fell into a coma of sorts. That and all the chaos backstage was finally the straw that ruptured the camel's spleen, so Vince fired Foley as commissioner. It's the end of the Foley era. This was meant to lead to a blow-off match with them at WrestleMania 17, but obviously it did not pan out that way. My grade for Armageddon 2000 is a C+. Usually these December shows, but then the lull between Survivor Series and the Royal Rumble are not that great, and this one is no exception. There are a couple of big moments on this show, certainly, but a couple of big moments does not a great show make. And again, for all the hype that the Hell in a Cell got going into this thing, pretty tame, all things considered. Even the big fall we got with Rikishi, it looked impressive, but even compared to Foley's fall in '98, still is very constructed and telegraphed. The matches I liked on this show and thought that were the better matches of the show weren't even spectacular matches, honestly. You know, it's interesting how much this show is remembered for Hell in a Cell, specifically Rikishi's fall, but even that match isn't that good, and the rest of the show around it also is like nothing spectacular. If you want to play a role in determining which shows I look at, be they good, bad, or somewhere in between, go to patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret, become a $10 backer or above, and you'll have the chance to nominate classic shows for me to review. Next time here, we're going to go ahead in the timeline a little bit, and I've already reviewed the Royal Rumble 2001, and I've already reviewed WrestleMania 17, so let's fill in that gap and review No Way Out 2001. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.
The real G's, everybody get rowdy. You didn't know, you better call somebody. Zipping through the dust of the Mystic Fall. No damn doubt about it, K-Kwik and
Road dog get rowdy.